Welcome to this edition of Monitoring the Pulse. I am Arash Bakhshandehpour, and today I am joined by Ben Hunt of out here in Utah as well, a founder and a chief design officer at Opux. And we have a fun conversation planned for you guys today to dive into their founding story, how they positioned themselves over the last 6 to 12 months here, and kind of what the future holds for them. Ben, thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Of
Excited
course.
to be here.
Yeah, and to kick things off, Ben, tell the audience a little bit about Opux.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, Opix is your orchestration layer between native conversation and AI prompt language. We help you plan from janky, messed up app idea that you're barely baking through. You can speak to us like you're talking to a best friend at a bar, talking to you about your idea. And then we take that, we translate that into an analysis of the idea. We run it against highly polished and sophisticated agents that do a market fit check. It checks it against compliance standards. It gives you a heads up into UX flows, persona fits. And then it takes that and it helps you establish starting prompts for your vibe code project. A lot of times it's where people get hung up is they just don't know how to get into the prompt. They think they could just speak, hey, build me an app that does this. And this is what the vibe code tool is promising that it can do. But at a certain point, you're just throwing something at the wall. It's a spray and pray type of a thing, and you just wasted a ton of credits. Opix significantly cuts down on that by translating what your natural language should have been into more of an AI direct computer language. And so your output is going to be much greater. So it helps you think through the process, think through your project, and then kicks you off into a much more successful launch.
Got it. So the value prop in Opix isn't necessarily just in the results. It's especially upfront in the data gathering and the validation that you guys do, and that's kind of the differentiation versus what's in the market. Is that right?
It is, yeah, correct.
Okay, lovely. And how long has Opix been standing?
We started talking about it in December of '04, but where it is today was more of a multiple pivot shift. And this was, I think we launched officially in November of 2025.
Congratulations. There's I don't want to steal your glory, but there's some fun partnerships and announcements that Opix has had and also has coming up here in a bit. So the rate of growth for you guys, at least the rate to market is really compelling stuff. How as you mentioned, like 2024 was the initial conversations, and then there's ideation that happens over the first parts of 25, and obviously going to market in November. How have you guys approached the idea of going to market? How have you looked at priorities, whether it's partnerships or integrations or marketing?
Yeah, so we actually, quick real recap on this. We were actually just going to be a design agency, to be honest. And so that was like our first idea of Opix was Opix UX. It's a play on Opus. So if you're into music, it's like the final opus, and that's kind of like what people are looking for in their design and their product. They want this grand finale, and then we pivoted to dropping the S and we put an X on it for UX. So Opix, that's how the name Opix came up. We were this design agency type of thing, me and my best friend and my partner, Tyler Spendlove. And but the more we got into it, we were like, whoa, this new thing called vibe coding is really taking storm. There's not a what if we did vibe design where you could do the same thing you could with coding, but like it would produce actual like UI, right? Like really good UI, Figma quality UI. And then we were quickly realized that that was a massive undertaking. And so we went from that into, okay, well, what if we tackle the entire like software design life cycle? And so we went, and so our go to market was we started talking to a ton of developers, a ton of product managers, and we chunked down, well, this is hitting here, this is hitting here, but these different areas kind of fail. And so our go to market, and my background is user experience, user research. And so I was applying that, forward. We talk to users, keep my biases, kick it out the door. And then what are people actually wanting? What's that big hole? And so our go to market has been really, it's people saying, this is what we're wanting. we're listening to that. We're nimble. Or not fragile, but we're agile enough to quickly pivot into that. And so we've gone through Reddit's, Discords, LinkedIn's, X, and to find those threads that are people are complaining about. Vibe code isn't doing this. Vibe code isn't doing this. I'm spending too much money here, too much money here. And so we're reaching out and we're attacking, not attacking, but we're approaching those people and saying, hey, we feel your pain. We understand that pain. FYI, here's Opix.
Got it. That's interesting because I think as you speak to founders, a lot of people have an idea, something they like might have interacted with or not interacted with, right, in their careers or in their journey, and that's kind of like their light bulb moment. But something that you guys did was you had a bit of a light bulb moment, but then also took the ideas to either it was networks, Discord channels, like you mentioned, the Reddit threads, whatnot, just to see if this is pressure tested in market. The question that I have for you is how do you avoid like the analysis paralysis of basically over researching and then not going to market with something versus something that you initially had?
Dude, for real, that's real. I don't know if like your listeners are aware of that, but that's a real thing, especially if you're a designer, right? Because if you're a designer, you're like, oh, I could just change one more pixel or I could make one more prettier thing or whatever, right? So that's been honestly, it's been a huge hurdle for me. Luckily, my partner, he's more of like, an attack dog. And so he helps to reel it in. But once you start getting into a vein, it's like a gold vein, right? It's actually a little bit easier to get rid of that analysis paralysis because you can start focusing on the job to be done. Like that's a famous, story, jobs to be done, right? And you're you can start getting into that side of it, but then you actually take it. And for me, it's start building on that feedback, start building immediately on what people are saying. And that actually helps to bring it out because now you're like, not only are you discovering what people are wanting, but you're discovering what tech limitations you're up against as well.
Yeah, ideation to execution is generally the biggest hurdle for a lot of businesses. That's why a lot of stuff doesn't get off the ground, obviously. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
One piece that you hit on that you and I briefly touched on the last call, I'd love to have you elaborate a little bit, is the team right now, it's you and Tyler. Help us understand what goes into identifying a solid co-founder, someone that you want to go into business with, and how you guys kind
Yeah.
of picked each other.
Um, yeah, I'm the Bonnie to his Clyde. Honestly, it's like we've been best friends for 8 years. He's always kind of been this funny entrepreneurial guy, but in like, one-off startups like a textile, blanket company or whatever. And I've always designed like his logos for it or, whatever the case might be. Um, but he's the most charismatic hype person. That's also based in, a firm foot in reality. And so partnering with him was kind of like a no-brainer. I'm very good on the technical side, but I know what my gaps are. My gaps are, well, we're gonna need to sell this thing. We're gonna need somebody who's connected into X, Y, and Z networks. And so it became like this kind of like this good marriage, right? This is where my gaps are. That's where his gaps are. And we're able to push through a lot together. So when you're finding your co-founder, somebody that you want to be in bed with, um, you have to you have to ask yourself, um, is this a person that I want to be married to? And then also you have to go through a divorce, like almost right up front. And that way you can really start fleshing out like, do we work well together? Do we not work well together? Is this person that's gonna bug me? If there's a hard decision, how do they react and how do they react to hard decisions or pivot because you're gonna have a billion of those right at the beginning. And so if you can't see yourself with that person, like I said, it's almost like a marriage. If you can't see yourself with that person fighting those battles alongside with you, then you need to take another look at who you're getting.
I think that's the perfect analogy. No, it's not about how you guys do on the best days. It's about how you guys do together on the worst days.
Right. Agreed.
So as you've gone through, again, ideation to execution, kind of going to market over these last few months, you have a lot of exciting things coming up in 2026. Thus far, what would you say is the single biggest insight? Let's say you're speaking to an audience of your peers. What is that single biggest insight or lesson that you'd want to share with them? Peers being, first time entrepreneurs, people that are taking the leap.
Uh, yeah. be prepared to be let down over and over again. This isn't for the faint of heart. And so my advice is if you're going in knowing that 99% of your time is either going to be spent doing things you don't want to do, like fundraising, you know, you need to be able to have a thick skin very, very quickly, and be prepared to be told no a ton. And so you're this guy that we're working with, really awesome guy. Hopefully you'll get a chance to meet him, at some point. But he was like, it's gonna feel like you're trudging through 3 feet of snow every day. And quite honestly, you don't know if you're ever gonna be out of that 3 feet of snow. But if you can endure it, then when you do get out of that snow, it's gonna be glorious. You're gonna be basking in Hawaii, basically. And so it's true. Like you feel like you're not only going uphill pushing a massive boulder, but it also feels like you're going uphill in 3 feet of snow, pushing a massive boulder. You're gonna have family and friends that are gonna be supportive at the beginning, but if you're not getting that traction, maybe they start being like, well, maybe you should start doing something else. And so you just have to stand your ground, find your sure foot, and keep persevering. Um You'll find that most startups don't fail because of bad idea or whatever. It's because they literally quit right before the thing finally takes. And then we've been through a few accelerators and watching a few of the people who've gone to those accelerators get to, the 11th hour and one of their co-founders quits or somebody's like, I can't do this anymore. And they bow out. Not because their idea was bad, it's just because they just couldn't hack through, you know, um, the grind. And it's scary. You don't know what the future is. You have to be, um, ego at the door, where if you need to pivot, pivot. There's no shame in pivoting. There's no shame in admitting that your first idea was wrong because it probably is. Um, and being flexible enough to say, but this is my market. This is what I want to be doing. And then listening to your users to help you define that process. Don't make a thing and then try to find users. Find a user problem to build a thing against.
Yeah, no question. You opened that by saying, "Be ready to be let down," and the question that I had banked was, "By who and by what?" And then you kind of went through this list. It's like, it's if you're trying to raise money, if you're dealing with prospective buyers, family, yourself. Like you said, you kind of have to leave that ego at the door, especially for first-time entrepreneurs that have had the stability of a W-2 up until that point. It starts to turn into like that devil on a shoulder a little bit of like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Right? It
Yes,
starts
yes,
whispering in your
exactly,
ear. It
exactly.
starts whispering in your ear. Um, what I'd like to hear too, because I think this stuff is what helps kind of bridge this forum with those first time entrepreneurs or people that are in their early stage experience of launching their own business, is help us learn about some real world examples. So a time where Opix either had to decide to walk away from a transaction or partnership, to, let's say, maintain reputation or maintain the integrity of what you wanted to do.
Mhm.
And then from there, maybe it was like a successful launch or something that resulted in a successful endeavor.
Yeah. That's an awesome question. I love this question. So we went through a couple partners in the beginning, and again, leaving ego and stuff out at the door, like they just weren't the right fit. They're great people, awesome human beings, but for what you're trying to accomplish, they were holding us. I felt like they were holding us back. They wanted to go down another hole or another direction that we didn't want to go down, and so we had to be. You have to be firm enough in your conviction of what you're wanting to do to understand, like, I'm not going to do that. And so, you know, we that was kind of like a real, like, partnership shift for us. We went from, almost 4 people down to just 2 people. But because we listened to our gut, listened to what our heart and our direction were trying to tell us that we needed to go. That's where it got interesting. That's where I felt like the universe, if you believe in that type of thing, decided that, like, oh, we're going to reward you for that. And because of that, we we built our MVP in Lovable. We vibe coded it, because that's a whole other story. We want to get into it is, don't be afraid if you don't have a dev, just get in there, learn Cursor, learn Lovable, just get an MVP, just start grinding on that, right? Anyways, we built our OPIX, I'm gonna call it like version 0.2, right? Like it's what's there today. You can go on Lovable today and get to it, right? Anyways, Lovable reached out to us and I thought it was gonna be like, hey, we're gonna steal your idea, right? Like it's actually a good idea. But instead, they said, we love OPIX, actually. We use it. So high five, like thank you, Lovable. And we are opening up our discovery store, if you want to call it a store, our discovery platform, and we want to feature you. You're going to be the first batch of people that we put on there. They have a 9 million plus user base. And so we went in there and we said, yep, filled out all the stuff we needed to. We got on to OPIX, go to lovable.dev, scroll down a little bit. There you go. You see us, OPIX, right in the very center. And it's the best apps to build with, or top apps to build with, or whatever they called it. And it's like we're with the three of them. There's like an icon one, and then there's like a logo builder maybe, but then there's OPIX right in the center. Again, it's because we followed what our heart was telling us. We followed what our users were saying in this, and we found this and identified this hole in this market. And it's turned out to be really exciting for us, which is setting us up for what I think is going to be a very exciting 2026.
I love hearing stories like that because like the path to market is never linear for businesses. And I think like the biggest misconception is like there is a path or there is a way you're supposed to do it. Right. So just to
Yep.
run things back, you and your partner initially had this design idea in this design platform. And then from there, did a little bit more digging and learned a little bit more about the vibe coding market and what's out there, and saw an opportunity in the market. Then you did some pressure testing with some market research, the Discords, the people in your network, the Reddit threads, like you mentioned. And then from there, you had an idea that you were ready to execute on. Then from there, you had some partnerships that tried to steer in a different direction. And at that point, you had done the market research and you kind of stuck to your guns. And then from there, like what better testament than what you mentioned, which is like the highlight from Lovable and the direct comms from them reaching out saying, hey, we love the tool, we're not stealing it. We use it, right? Like that, the journey
Yep.
is never linear. And I think that stuff is really, it's really validating for people that are on this journey to kind of hear about.
It is. It is. I mean, honestly, like, you know, it's validating to me when I feel like, man, like I'm feeling let down. Like, like we talked about, like, that mental load that it takes on you. I have you can't see it, but over here is my whiteboard, and I have a column to manifestation, and then I have a column that's called blessings and thanks. And, I look at that and, that lovable things on there. It's like, um, no, when I feel like this is a bad idea or no one likes it or whatever, I look over there and it's like, actually, it is a good idea. You're right. Like, Lovable wouldn't have put their name on something to their 9 million users if they were like, not that good. But it is. And now, we have over 13,000 views. Top, we're the top 1% of vibe coded apps on Lovable in the United States, where every day we're significantly growing. We have a massive conversion rate, which is I never thought was going to be possible. And so, yeah, you never know where the road is going to go. And we said this earlier, like put your ego and your bias, kick it out the door, and just be open to wherever the journey is going to take you, and be prepared for whatever that journey is going to take you.
People always see the results, but they don't understand everything that goes into it. Like, like you mentioned, you went to market with this stuff, I think it was November, right?
Yep.
So we're talking maybe right around 2 months at this point. And people might pay attention to the conversions, to the downloads, to the views, and the usage. But in reality, there's this December of 24, right? That's nearly a year of ideation and testing and
Yes.
theories and developing some market research. So it's a really exciting journey for you guys.
I appreciate it.
A piece that I'm curious about, you touched on this earlier on the call, but I'd love to give you a chance to go a little bit more in depth on it. So this is a market that does have some legacy services, right?
Hmm.
Just to reiterate or to clarify, shed some more light on how you guys have tackled differentiation or positioning in the market?
Yeah. Yes, how we tackled it. It's again, we've listened to the users. We've found that like I've always been very close to emerging technology. I love emerging technology. Some people are afraid of it. Some people embrace it. I embrace it, right? And so, but as a UX guy, I'm constantly looking for what the problem is inside of that. What's the thing? And so I am like, I tackled it as in everyone's trying to solve this flashy, shiny thing of like the output from the vibe coded tool, right? Like, oh, I made this app, it took me 45 minutes and now I'm making $30,000, a day, right? Like, and it's not true. You're not doing that. But what the problem is that, and how we tackled it is that, well, no one's solving to the left of this thing. And that's what we want to focus on is how do we remove friction? How do we remove barrier so that even like, the guy down the street or the person down the street who always had this idea for a dog walking app, could come in and use Opix, understand his idea, understand his users, understand how to market to people, and then and to get into the vibe code tool. And that's probably like one of the most fulfilling things right now is the feedback we're getting back. We've had a few people say, like, I really feel enabled. I really feel empowered. First, I was beating my brain against the wall. Like, I don't know how to start this thing. Opix has alleviated a lot of that barrier to entry for us. So thank you for that. So, we again, going back to your question, like we tackled it by listening. We tackled it by understanding where the thing was failing and what users were actually saying that they wanted. Instead, you started seeing this, I don't know how many vibe code tools are out there now, right? But they're all doing the same thing. Not one of them, like maybe one's like, oh, I do native iOS app, or one person's like, well, I make websites better, or another person's like, oh, I do better, UI or whatever. I don't want that. I could use any one of them. That's fine. I just don't know how to do that. Like, I don't know how to get into this thing and actually make it build what's in my brain. And so that's where Opix came in.
I love it. Instead of chasing commoditization, which like there is a lot of in tech right now, especially, it's how do we just make it easier
Yeah.
for users? Like what I think you mentioned, like what is the how do we mitigate the barrier of entry? And I that speaks in volumes with the results you guys have had in the last couple of months. So we've talked about the last 6 to 12 months. Ben, I'd love to hear what the next 6 to 12 months look like. What are the challenges that you guys are anticipating as you're planning out 2026?
Yeah. Um, so like I said, like what we have right now is our I don't even call it MVP, like maybe just like a idea viable product. I don't know,
A
like
P.
version like 0.01 or whatever.
Uh,
Um, but 2026 is going to be the year that you see Opix really bust out of its shell. We've we have an official developer now, which is awesome. I'm not the one having to develop on, vibe code platform. It's like legit, real hard code, which is going to be great. Um, we have a ton of partnerships right now that we are in the middle of finalizing, which is exciting. There's a lot of when you see it, there's going to be a lot of names around the Salt Lake and the Silicon Slopes area that you recognize that are going to be design partners for us. So the next 6 to 12 months for us are we have to move very quickly because at any given time, any one of these platforms could wake up, realize that they need to solve this thing to the left, and so we need to be the ones who are first to the market, or at least in that beginning, group of people who are launching, right? And so we're going to be moving very quickly. Fundraising. Anybody out there on your podcast who's listening, hit me up. It's going to be a time of launch, learn, rinse, repeat, and we are going to be networking like crazy, trying to get that. And then I think the challenge is like what I said. Lovable just secured $330 million in funding. You're looking at these massive fundraisers or these massive raises from these companies, and we're not sure what they're going to do with it. And are they going to get into our space or are they not? So I don't know. Like the future is unknown. If anybody said, "Oh, I got AI locked in. I know what's going to happen next," no, you don't. You don't.
that's a liar.
It is, right?
Yeah.
But the biggest advice I can give off of just this one little segment right here is don't be afraid. Just like just get at it, right? Like you can't worry about if Cursor is going to launch some new IDE or if level or like whatever whoever your competitor is, right? That you just watch them raise. 'Cause that's another thing that's really going to get into your psyche is that like they just raised $330 million. They're what's keeping them from knocking me out the door? Like probably nothing, but you'll never know unless you try. Like if they're going to try to knock you out, you've done something right. If Lovable came to me and copycatted me, and you could tell that it was a Opix copycat, right? That's flattery. Like that's like they. I told you my idea was right. Like they just had a lot more cash. They were a lot more quicker to be able to execute on that. And so 2026 execution MVP official launch, which will be we're hoping, first week of February, we will be able to get it out into more of the public's hands, and then partnerships like crazy.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially like in this now growth state that you guys kind of find yourself in. Like it was from the lovable call out and the listing to now MVP. And then to your point, I think the trickiest part is understanding what your market's going to be like. When I say market, I mean like the competitive landscape for the platform or partnership players out there. There are certain markets in tech that prioritize partnership, building integrations, and they encourage that. Certain markets in tech that commoditize, like we already kind of talked about. Preparing yourself for like either path, not really knowing which one's going to occur, but like positioning yourself for either
Yeah.
path, I think is oftentimes overlooked in the journey as businesses are kind of building their iterations out. And one of the things that I like to talk through, you've touched on it as well as far as how you've integrated this into the platform, but it's top of mind, I think, for everyone. AI, AI, AI. And what does that mean to Opix? And I'd like to hear how you guys have not only integrated it into the tooling or considered integrations with it into the tooling and making sure that it's part of the platform and part of the tool, but beyond that, just on a day to day, how you guys are taking AI into consideration in the decision making that you're doing.
Uh, yeah, for sure. So, we're if you talk just about Opix alone, like we're native AI, right? And we're using a lot of different parts of like what's popular with AI today. Whether it's agentic and you're using it to run parallel tasks, or if you are using it to have like a very hyper trained specific agent to be able to be like the most world renowned thing in this area. But outside of OPEX, again, we're a small team, right? Team of two. And so, we are using it to help us with our marketing, so like it's able to go and scrape Reddit threads. We're using AI to scrape Discord threads to be able to pull out very tailored information that we want and that we need, and then able to use AI to then be able to help us formulate what is a GTM for this group of people? What's the GTM for these group of people? I don't think of AI as a replacement. I think of AI as a X tool. And so I think that people sniff out uh, authenticity. And if you're using AI to write everything, you're using AI to like generate everything for you, then you become like people understand you're a bot. Like you just feel like you're a oh, that's a robotic company, that's a robot, whatever. But if you're using it to do the hard work, like scrape things, get people, understand where people are at, where they're hanging out, what type of water cooler talk is happening, and then using it to help you formulate and talk through the idea, and then executing, at a person level, and then humanizing that, that's where we are striving to keep OPIX for the people, type of a thing. So we use AI to enhance what we can, enhance our outreach and our reach into the unknown, and then to help us formulate what's next. I mean, one thing AI is extremely good at is thinking through like a million different edge cases. And so you can sit down, you pivot, and you can say, oh, like have this agent be antagonist to this agent to play, devil's advocate. and then go back and forth on pros and cons. And so we use it to really just fine tune um, our market plan.
Yeah, that's you and I spoke about this previously, which is I think that there is, and I was included in this, but there was this misconception or misunderstanding of what the introduction of AI, especially at this stage, can mean into the workforce and into industries and into tech, et cetera. And I think we're due for a bit of a course correction because, to your point, there's been this call it like a saturation of AI that's kind of sussed itself out. It's already kind like most people, most users can sift through the noise and figure out what's human, what's not. And I think, to your point, being able to still leverage it in a supplemental capacity, right? Like, I'm on the front lines of this stuff as well, but not displacing authenticity is like this balance that I think people are now just barely starting to kind of figure out, as opposed to this influx that occurred over the last 3 and change years. So,
Right.
yeah, that rings true. I'm gonna leave you with this one, Ben, as you're going through this journey with Opix, and again, like, congratulations on the early success. Really excited to see what these next 6 to 12 months look like. How do you want Opix to be perceived in the market?
Whew. Gotta leave the great question for the end there, dude. Thanks. Um, no, I want Opix to be perceived in the market as an enabler. Um, the tool that you use to 10x your output in the world of like companies downsizing and you're losing employees and people are afraid of AI taking their job. I want Opix to be looked at as the thing that is not the thing to replace your job, but to be able to ensure your spot or ensure your role. Or if you were affected and now your team has been greatly reduced and now you're having to put more hours into there, use Opix to be able to compensate for what was lost. And so I want people to look at Opix as it's fun, it's intuitive, and it's enabling. It helps us go from an idea to either a launched app or a launch feature a lot quicker, a lot smarter, and that you just had a great time doing it.
Lovely. Thank you. And for anyone that's curious, there are good enablers and bad enablers. The Opix is not trying to be the kid on the playground that told you to jump off the swing set. Opix is trying to be the one that helps you build your business and eliminate that barrier of entry. Ben, I appreciate the time, man. This is really exciting journey. I'm absolutely going to keep a thumb on the pulse, no pun intended, of your guys' journey. We will stay in touch. For anyone that's curious, you can find Ben on LinkedIn, Ben Hunt, and Opix.ai. Go play around with the tool, also listed on Lovable's marketplace. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.